Yeah.
I just like the idea of, you know, of everybody in the situation being responsible and culpable, you know, for a solution.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not and creating a solution and fixing it aren't necessarily the same thing. The creating the solution is the partnering thing. You know, how do I go about helping you, even though I can't fix the problem? You know, a
Yeah.
solution for us in our space.
Well, welcome to another episode of What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we're going to be talking through how the issue isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility. And that may sound like a painful idea, but the reality is that you have situations in your life that you didn't cause, and you're dealing with the aftermath, the outcome of somebody else's choices. And you can stay stuck in this isn't my fault, and stay stuck in this isn't my fault, or you can take ownership over making something turn into something else. And so I'm with our favorite licensed professional counselor, Kyle Hargrove. We're going to be talking through today what's going on with this. Like, how can you take a situation that you didn't create, you didn't cause, that you're actually a victim of, maybe even, and turn it into something completely different. You know, you get what you get sometimes when you sign up for marriage, and sometimes they evolve into something. But we have more agency than we're willing to take sometimes. And so we want to help you navigate this space if you feel like you're, you know, dealing with the aftermath of somebody else's poor choices. So, Kyle, as you think about this whole concept of it's not my fault, but it is my responsibility, you know, where does your head go first in that space?
The first place my head goes is that in my lifetime, I've rarely ever heard those words. Mm-hmm. It's not your fault. The words I've heard is, it is your fault. Everything's your fault.
Yeah.
And if other people haven't said them to me, I've probably said them myself. Because I think the first thing that is important to recognize here is to be able to compartmentalize and separate fault from responsibility, and realize that those don't always start and come from the same place, mm-hmm. or the same individual, you know, as we're talking about the dynamics of a relationship between partners. But I don't know. I think about when I was teaching the 6th grade, and at the end of every class period, I would try to get the kids to clean up a little bit, pick up the floor. You know, there's another class coming in here, and let's not, you know, have it, be a pigsty in here. And I would say, hey, would you pick up that? It's not mine. You know, well, yeah, I know, but that piece of paper on the floor, would you mind picking it? Well, I didn't put it there. And it was just one of those things where, okay, I realize that, but can we take a little pride and responsibility in keeping our classroom tidy at a minimum? I mean, I don't, you know, it's not dirty necessarily. I don't know, 6th graders, it got dirty sometimes. but just trying to get them to engage in that idea that, so though I might not be at fault where something is concerned, if I'm a part of something, then creating at least a space where it can be fixed does kind of become my responsibility.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of dynamics that, you know, we could start splitting hairs about, well, when it is our responsibility, are we responsible for creating the space? Are we responsible for just being patient? Are we responsible for helping to fix it? Or, you know, a lot of different things. And each scenario, you know, brings its own dynamics to the table. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that we can get that specific in this conversation. But to say that at a very minimum, we create an environment as a team member, as a partner, mm-hmm. to say, I'm here with you. This is a supportive endeavor. And I'll do what I can to help create the place where this can be fixed.
Well, I think that matters, and the attitude of team is really important. I've been digging into some stuff for the marriage intensive that we're putting together, and we've got this biblical reference guide that's written by David Penner. He's a doctorate, and he was the operations director for the Gottman organization. And one of the things I love about Gottman stuff is it's double blind, gold standard, reliable, valid research, right? So, when we're talking about our relationships and taking responsibility for a space, it's not, let's say your spouse loses their job or they have this horrible work environment. That's not your fault, right? It's not your fault that your boss is a lunatic, right? It's not your fault you got laid off or whatever the situation is, but it is your responsibility, our responsibility, to turn that into something positive. And the thing that stood out to me in the research when I was reading this yesterday was a study by Neil Jacobson found a difference in the way that couples manage stress. Couples who did well buffer their relationship from stresses external to the relationship by having a conversation nearly every single day where they each empathically listen to each other, describe their stresses and events of the day. And this is, when you talk about having intimacy with somebody and having a safe place to fall and protecting the relationship and processing what's going on in your partner's world on that particular day, it's super, super important. Those tiny, small little conversations, and you're protecting the relationship from what's happening outside. It's a different mindset than a lot of couples have. They usually take out their stress on each other.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, and that's one of the typical issues that I think probably almost every couple that marries run up against. And this is one of the, women are from Venus,
Mars. Men are from Venus or something. Yeah.
Some planet.
John Gray. Yeah.
Does it still exist? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
he's not dead.
We talk about the differences in men and women and how we've got to learn to, understand them, or try to understand them, do the best we can to understand them, make an attempt. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when women come home from work or from school or wherever it is that they are, a ball of stress and fed up with the day and really upset with somebody that said something or did something at work. And the guys, we zoom in and say, okay, let's just nip this in the bud and let me fix it for you. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that has been shown time and time again not to work too well. Because our wives aren't asking us to fix it. They just need to talk about it. They just need to express their feelings and let us know what happened in the day. With my clients, when I'm working with couples, we try to develop some type of a strategy that goes along the lines of divert daily, withdraw weekly, and abandon annually.
Okay, you need to explain that.
Diverting daily is taking that time, that 10 minutes, that 15 minutes, no matter what it is, but that you schedule it and put it at the same time every day. And you just talk about the day. You just have the opportunity to either talk about the day upcoming or the day that just happened, if it's in the morning or the evening. And about schedule and things that need to be done. That way we don't get our wires crossed about what the responsibilities are. Yeah. And maybe we have the opportunity then to share, a disappointment in the day or how we feel like something's not going well, not to be fixed, but just to get it in the open. And couples who do this thing, and it's kind of sad that it's something we have to intentionally do, but it is. And that's to communicate every day. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When they make that a priority, and say, even if I don't want to, even if I don't feel like it, even if I don't know that I have anything to say, we're going to set that time aside, and we're going to do that because it's important. The withdraw weekly is just a date night.
Okay. I thought you meant withdraws and I don't want to be around you. I'm taking myself somewhere else.
Put in the house and the kids, once a week, just to go do, even if it's to go grocery shopping together, although that has led to some unpleasant experiences in some households. So, not everybody agrees on whether you should buy name brands or generic.
Brother, or organic, or
there you go.
Right.
You go.
Yeah.
And then the abandon annually is do the best you can to get a week or 5 days away from kids, family, everybody else. Just the two of you go talk about your goals for the next year as a partnership. Talk about, did we achieve what we wanted to in the past 12 months as a couple, as a family? Maybe we wanted to save money to do something. How do we do? And then say, okay, based on what we just experienced in the last 12 months, what do we want to do for the next? What do we need to adjust? What do we need to start doing that we haven't been doing? What do we need to stop doing that we have been doing? It doesn't seem to be working so well. So that kind of communication, it starts on that daily basis. It starts by making it a daily priority to inquire and to listen and care.
Well, and I think couples, a good chunk of their communication, if they're having it, is logistics, which, who's getting the kids from soccer and remember to pick up milk on the way home and whatever. I think people get into trouble when, like you were saying earlier, they try to fix something. I know for me, I like to know I'm off the hook for fixing. I think most people that like to solve problems or are drivers or achievers like to do that kind of thing. So I have to choose. I'm just going to listen now, especially with my 20 somethings, right? Just going to listen. That's your problem, not my problem. Just going to listen because they don't want to hear it anyway, right? And then you'll push them in the other direction. But the other piece of it is, can I just choose to be curious about this and not own, have a healthy sense of identity and not own their problem and try to fix it or think less of them because they have it or whatever, just be with. If we get too heavily into the judgment space, and start criticizing, or worse yet, get defensive when we are criticized, and then you get that stupid cycle going, and then you end up breeding contempt, which is, those are three things that Gottman calls the horsemen of the apocalypse. He's got another one, but, related to this discussion, they can evolve out of our failure to just be with and listen to our partner.
I know that in some relationships, they have evolved to the point where, and I'll use my own as an example. When my wife comes home and I can tell that something's up, and so I give her a little space, give her a few minutes, because I've figured out what to do and what not to do, things to say and not to say. And I know that she eventually is going to come in and talk about it. And then she'll share what's going on and how it's affected her and why she feels that way. And then I wait for either nothing to happen or I wait for the question, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And when I hear that question, of course, my first thought is better you than me, but that's not ever, I don't say that out loud.
Yeah.
But, at that point, we can have a discussion about what I see or what I hear. And often that's taken into consideration and it may be used in moving forward to try to resolve the situation. And often I completely miss the point. It has happened,
But the key there with your wait step, she's communicating with you about something important to her that's bothering her. She desires intimacy. She wants to connect with you. She wants to be known by you. And so when you choose to wait, you're letting her show you who she is, to be vulnerable. It's safe in that space. You're not trying to fix her, because that's usually what we communicate when we go, well, have you tried XYZ? No, I'm really not that stupid. Yes, of course I did. Oh my God, why am I talking to you? So there's no use for that then. So you're creating this space for her to be known. And that's just absolutely lovely, because that's what she really wants. And then to when she feels known, then she's going to ask you, what do you think? And she's actually going to listen to that because she already feels cared for. And so it's brilliant on your part to do things that way. And for our listeners that struggle with, well, my partner doesn't listen to me, I have a what to say for them, because I do this in my life with everybody, because it's just really important to me to get heard sometimes, right? And I take responsibility for that to a certain extent. I tell people what I want from them. And my husband, as probably plenty of crazy stories about how I've been off my rocker with something, but I've said to him, okay, I'm going to tell you this thing that happened. I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to agree with me that they're all bad and just hate them with me for just a minute. And then after that, I'll come to my senses. I promise. Can you do that? And he'll be like, yeah. Like, what has happened to you? What's happened to my wife? Where'd she go? But I set him up for success in that because I'm real clear about what I want. And so if you're married to a spouse that, doesn't know how to do that and they love you, they don't want you suffering, but it's the fixing that gets in the way. And so ask for what you want. I just want to talk about this. I just want you to listen.
And thank you for the compliment, saying that the waiting part is brilliant. I will say that that's something that is not too difficult for the 60-year-old version of me to do. In the previous decades, I'm not going to be able to stand on that and say, yeah, the same thing I did then, because it's not. I mean, as a younger individual, I would often even cut her off, and say, oh, you what? You said they did what? You gotta, and it's not that the intent was bad or evil. Mm-hmm. It's just that the delivery was needing some work.
Well, I would say that a good chunk of that was participative. That kind of stuff. Women love that. We do that. We talk over each other. We're participating in each other's conversations. It's when you get into the here's what you should do thing. Mm-hmm. And my daughter is amazing at this. She's 20. She's brilliant at waiting. Like, I don't know how she does that because she's type A also. She's very much achievement goal driven. She's amazing. But she has learned to let people do their thing. She doesn't lose her thought. And I think that's just remarkably mature of her. I don't think I was like that at her age. Matter of fact, I know I wasn't. But the whole, and I think that's one of the differences between men and women. The research shows that when you do that whole, what? Oh, are you really? Oh, that's terrible. They don't like that it comes across as challenge. And like you're trying to take over the conversation, you're nodding your head. Yeah.
Well, I think a big part of that, though, too, is, and this is something that's been emphasized, I think, by a lot of speakers and writers and therapists and such, is that, when you're listening to try to create that environment of vulnerability and to be culpable in that process, to say that's my responsibility. You feeling vulnerable, you willing to be vulnerable, that's on you.
Yeah.
Me providing a space where you do, that's on me.
Yeah.
But it's that difference in whether am I listening to reply or am I listening to understand? And that's where the silence can come in for me a lot of the times, is because I'm still processing. Mm-hmm. I'm still running this all through my head to figure out the way that I can be the most supportive, the most empathic, and be an affirmer and an encourager instead of trying to fix it and trying to just figure out the right words to say to reply in a way that makes me sound coherent, because sometimes I'm not.
Yeah, me too. And that's interesting because your focus is then on the other person, mm-hmm. and not about, coming across XYZ. So you're cool. It's more about what they need. Yeah. How can I love well
enough to know that I blubber on and blabber on and do that by default. So that's anticipated. Mm-hmm. But I think that, I want her to feel heard and to know that I am doing my dead level best to understand how she feels and her position in the situation, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And if I can accomplish that, then I feel like I've been a good partner.
Yeah. And it's not gender specific, like men and women want to feel heard and not fixed. That's key. And the other piece of it, you keep mentioning vulnerability. It's on us to choose to be vulnerable. One of the things people don't know about trust is that when I'm not vulnerable with you myself, when I don't talk about what's important to me, when I don't share what I really think about something, that actually diminishes trust. Yes. Because if I'm not willing to take a risk, then what happens with the other person is I don't feel safe with you. It's a really interesting dynamic. There's tons of research on this. And And so I might say, well, but my stuff isn't safe with this person. And that may be true. So choose stuff that is, but choose vulnerability because you're a brave person. That, is it who you are?
And that it's important to go back and understand the definition of bravery or courage. It doesn't mean the absence of fear.
Exactly.
At all. It means choosing to charge forward and to move forward, even in the face of that fear, because whatever it is that you're trying to achieve is worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it. Whatever it might be, your position, your reason,
the relationship.
Yes.
Your life. Yeah. But I was out in South Dakota a couple of weeks ago, and I learned something about buffalo and the difference between buffalo and cattle. Cattle apparently will scatter if there's a bad storm, like a tornado or, really terrible thunderstorm. They just run everywhere. They go lose their ever loving mind and run and try to hide and whatever. Buffalo hunker down and they charge the storm. And the scientists say that they do this because they know there's something on the other side of it that's like where they are now. So they're going to go do the worst first, which is the thing my dad used to say, do the worst first so that you can reap the benefit, right? Like that's the mentality that's different between a cow, which has life done to it. You don't see cows going off and instigating anything, right? But you see all these things. I grew up in Montana, so I know what a buffalo that looks like that gets ticked off at a tourist. They'll take so much, and then they're like, "Dude, I'm so done with you." And then it's tourist throwing season,
yeah,
like frisbee golf or something. Very dangerous sport, but not for the buffalo. The point is, though, is they run into the storm, and so when we choose conflict, when we choose to do a brave, hard thing by being vulnerable, being real, telling the truth, that's actually strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I have the vision in my mind of the buffalo herd running toward the storm, singing, and we'll all go down together, but because that could be a bad scenario. But by the same token, doing it together and whether they know what they're doing or not, believing in what they're doing and making that a commonality amongst them. I think, with the cattle, they're going to scatter. Some will make it, some won't.
I'm thinking there's a Far Side comic somewhere in this, but I'm not that cool.
More than likely. Yeah. More than likely. But yeah. I just like the idea of, of everybody in the situation being responsible and culpable, for a solution. It's not and creating a solution and fixing it aren't necessarily the same thing. Creating the solution is the partnering thing. How do I go about helping you, even though I can't fix the problem? A solution for us in our space.
So I have this couple that comes to mind I worked with years ago where the in-laws were terrible to the husband, really just awful to him. And, she loses her dad, and then her mom ends up with dementia, and she's trying to do the right thing by her mother, who was just horribly mean to her husband all these years. And, so there's this tension of how do I love everybody well in this circumstance? And what does that look like? And what's really interesting is they navigated it pretty doggone well by establishing boundaries and everybody taking responsibility. And nobody had a pity party over any of this. It was just it was almost clinical. Here's the situation. And the husband was amazing because he didn't let the interpersonal baggage and history of meanness get in the way of what he wanted to do to love his wife well in that. And of course, he would have rather it had been some other situation, that he was spending money on. But he also knew what he was dealing with and took responsibility in that space. And I just really admired how he walked through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not an unusual scenario, by the way. I can't I know I probably have a handful of people in my current caseload who are dealing with the stress of the family mm-hmm. not accepting their spouse.
Yeah.
Whether it's a cultural thing or whether there's been something said or done in the past, or whether they're just mean. And sometimes that is the case. But that becomes one of the things, I'm not at fault because my family is not accepting my spouse, but I am responsible to help that process and do everything I can to help it move forward and progress mm-hmm. rather than stay in that space. And I have to know there's a day coming. I don't know if it's today or tomorrow or the day after that, but there's a day coming when I have to take a side. Mm-hmm. If they don't respond in a positive way, there's a day coming when I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to be responsible mm-hmm. in a way that supports my spouse over any and everybody else.
Well, it was interesting in their situation. She told her mom, and this is before she got dementia, but she told her mom, look, we'll talk about anything, but you cannot complain to me and expect me to hang out. You could start complaining to me about my husband if you want to, but I'm not going to sit with you any longer if you do that. And she'd get up and leave. And eventually her mom learned, okay, if she wants her company, if she wants her daughter's company, that's off the table.
Yeah.
So I was really impressed with how she handled all of that. And she honored her mother, and she respected her husband, and she demanded that from her mom. And he responded to that very, very well. So that's a beautiful story, of both people protecting the relationship from an external stressor, which is super important to having a connecting, lasting marriage.
And it's also a phenomenal example of that lady training her mother. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm training you by holding up my boundary. And when you violate the boundary, I get up and walk out.
Yep.
And I'm not just walking to get a drink. I'm gone. I'm done.
We're done here today.
Another day, and we'll try it again. And so she's training her mother to respect that boundary. Whereas if she said, "No, we talked about that, and I said if you do this, I'm going to go. So careful," and then she does it again, and you never actually get up and leave. Then you're training them that there really is no boundary.
Exactly. Yeah, your yes needs to be yes, and your no needs to be no.
Absolutely.
Good stuff today. Good stuff. So it's not our fault, but it is our responsibility. So culpability for a solution is the key. I love that. So you can stop by our website and grab an ebook. So it's real short, little PDF on 5 tools to stop walking on eggshells, help you level up in your relationships. Have a great day. Thanks for coming by.